Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm practicing this as Irish. Giahuich, and welcome to season 11 of Gather for Her, a powerhouse masterclass series for social impactors, exploring what it means to be a relational change maker and a leader in these unprecedented times of systemic change. Let me tell you a little bit about Powerhouse, and I will introduce myself and everybody else in just a moment. But Powerhouse champions relational change makers and their organizations by offering hands at your back support with our relational change maker model to amplify and accelerate the social impact that you're here to make. And Gather for Her is a series of conversations. And our theme this season on Gather is holding space for vulnerability, which is actually part 2 of 4 that began where our annual fire circle left off. And we have, what I mean by that is we host an annual fire circle every year. And we always inquire into a seemingly unanswerable question to listen into the collective solutions that arrive between us. And our question this year was healing our systems. How do we heal our systems? And at the end of 4 days of exploring that, what was very clear was relational ways and relationship was the instructions. I'll call it that because it came from our collective solution finding and listening into each other. So it's like this instruction of exploring relational ways was what we were kind of told to do between all of us. And so in season 10 of Gather for Her, that was our focus, breaking open to relational ways. And in this season, season 11, we're taking us further out on the skinny branches to explore holding space for vulnerability, because that's what happens when you're in relationship. I want you to know that every Gather conversation is offered to illuminate hope, to encourage possibility, and to challenge each of us to make the shift from individuated leadership to interconnected, from top down to heart centered, or from transactional to relational. My name's Tina Overbury, or Tina O, and I'm your moderator. I'm an ally of settler heritage, and I'm currently living as an uninvited guest on the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territories of the Squamish people. The Coast Salish Sea is right outside my window, and I'm grateful to play and create and do my best work here to steward the land where I rest my head on Nechwelaquam, also known as Bowen Island. I'm super grateful to be in circle this morning with my co-conversationalists. The Braid of Powerhouse, Charlene Sanjanko, Christina Benty, and Sharon Marshall aren't here with us today. But the awesome Janet Mohappy Banks is here, is also one of our Amplify coaches and is a conscious leadership coach, executive coach, and a whole bunch of things. I'm just going to pass over to you, Shar, to start us off and introduce yourself. And no, not Shar, sorry, Janet, I'm out of order. Over to you, Janet. And then Shar, if you can introduce Marilyn. I'll go back to you in a second, Marilyn. Okay, over to you, Janet.
Thank you so much, Tina, and thank you so much for having me again. I love these conversations so much. I'm very grateful to be here, living on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish people here in Cole Harbour, Vancouver. I am an international best-selling author, speaker, breakthrough coach, and leadership consultant for high-achieving founders, entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers. My work basically helps you to be the version of you that breaks through all of your glass ceilings to reach the success and fulfillment you want without stressing out, burning out, or freaking out. This is what I do now. Thank you so much again. Shah, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Janet. It's so good to be here in circle with you. I'm Charlene Sanjanko. I'm the founder of Powerhouse and of Regen Media. It's my pleasure to have a conversation this morning from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Squamish people here in Gibsons, BC on the Sunshine Coast. And it is my pleasure to dig into deep, rich, meaningful conversation and just explore and see what comes through. This is one of my favorite things to do, and very grateful and excited to meet Marilyn this morning. I want to honor and respect show honor and respect to her being here with us. And I'm just going to read her professional bio. Forgive me for reading, but I don't want to miss anything. So I will tell you a little bit about Marilyn Maychak. She's a cultural navigator and educator who has been learning with and from Indigenous people, Black and Brown people, about Indigenous research, methodologies, current practices, and approaches to community engagement. Learning through and with the arts as a form of self-expression, knowledge, identity, and a vehicle for reclamation, cultural continuity, and social change. Her work has evolved from being an educator to becoming a bridge between educators and the education system to parents and the community. Marilyn uses narrative inquiry and gathering to make and hold space for listening through oral, written, and visual stories about who we are, always doing her best to identify and empower the historically excluded, equity-seeking, and deserving voices in community. She absolutely loves picture books and in a variety of genres, especially from the growing masses of literature from Black, Brown, and Indigenous authors and illustrators. Marilyn embraces books and photography to decolonize and weave anti-racist, anti-oppressive approaches to learning and building intercultural understanding in ways that empower people to tell their stories, that represent images of who we really are, who they really are, where they are coming from, and tell the whole story. And in reading that, it just reconfirms how excited I am for this conversation. And I just want to pass the talking stick over to you, Marilyn, and tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you would most want us to know about you in this moment.
Well, Kuyanemik for that lovely intro. I also wanted to just acknowledge so Ulakut, which is good morning in Inuktitut, and Aitzquil, which is good morning in Hulkaminam. I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the traditional ancestral unceded territories of the Snuneymuxw people here on the eastern shore of Vancouver Island, central Vancouver Island. I love hearing that. I just picture books are the thing. And I have to fangirl for a moment here, Janet. I absolutely love everything you post on LinkedIn. And there was a post the other day about literature. There was, what was her name? I think you had shared Eve Akini's post of just how we overthink inclusion, and just Eve had shared examples of just like how simple it is, like just to see images of ourselves, and the images she had posted were illustrations of black kids, black people, black families just doing everyday things, and I just like it's not hard. And so I just love to see more of that. And I have these conversations frequently with some friends of mine, who have kids who have grown, who are now young adults, and also kids who are in preschool and starting school. And these were the things we wanted to see as kids when we were young, and now as adults, there's so many amazing people out there who are sharing the stories that we wanted to. We're basically writing stories and illustrating stuff for us, for the little kids inside of us. So I'm so excited for this conversation, and just thinking about moving from top down to heart-centered to being in a relationship with each other is the core of, I feel, who I am and the work that I do. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Marilyn. I also want to let everybody know that where we met, that you were part of the Indigenous Lift Collective initiative in the house, and I had the absolute pleasure of leaning in and hearing all of the layers of your story, because I got to chat with you, and the whole goal was to write what you care about from the inside out, and your impact. So I just want to hands up to Vanessa L'Esperance and to the Indigenous Lift Collective for what they do and our work with them, and for the introduction to you. I wonder if we want to pick up, actually. I mean, we got our first question, but I wonder if we can weave it into the fangirl piece with Janet, because there's a like-mindedness. Maybe we might be able to build on something there. Our first question is, how do you hold space for yourself and for your team or the people you work with? Like, how do you hold space? And I wonder if there's a weaving in here about it being easy, or does it take either of you somewhere? Do you want to build on this? What arrives? And I'll just open the mic to either of you, whoever wants to jump in on this one.
I can go. So in thinking about this, and just having a conversation with a couple of friends of mine, because my business is, I'm a solopreneur, so I'm just starting my consulting business, but I have a team, a community of people around me who support me in my personal life, my business life. And my friend Veronica, vulnerability. These are good feelings. Yeah, being able to hold space for each other, to celebrate our joys, our hurts, our successes, our challenges, and just really creating community, a sense of belonging, to come as you are, come as your whole self, no masks, just to be you. And I think, yeah, just as we were talking about it, that when we do that for each other, we allow each other to sit, to listen, and to listen for understanding, not listening to respond, but to really just to understand, and just work things through. Sometimes just getting that, whatever we need, out there, and not holding on to it anymore, is all that we need. And yeah, just building that sense of trust, that relational trust with each other. Yeah, it just allows us to hold space for honoring each other, for space for creativity, and intellectualizing. Yeah, intellectualizing things and going off on the things that we're passionate about, and that just fill our soul and motivate us, and to laugh. Laughter is so important, just to be able to laugh at ourselves and laugh at the situation. And know that we're okay, we got each other's back, and doesn't matter what's going on, that we'll make time and space for each other.
Yeah, I love that. I love all of that. And to weave the two together, for me, I'm just reminded of a client I once had. This was an incredibly successful person, an incredibly successful woman. She's been honored by the Queen of England, when the Queen was still alive, obviously. A black woman who couldn't be seen, who couldn't allow herself to be seen. And when we dug deeply into the reasons for that, it was because she never saw herself. She never saw herself, you know, and there was this work that we did around a doll, because she never had a black doll. As a young girl, there weren't black dolls. There wasn't this representation of people like us. And so she learned from a very young age that the way that she looked, the way that she was undesirable. Like, so undesirable, nobody even wants to make a doll of her. And I think that that's where it's so important. Representation in art and literature and toys are just so important, because when we are able to see ourselves in the things that we view, in the things that we play with, we allow ourselves to see ourselves. We allow us to see us. Does that make sense? I know what I'm trying to say, but it's all a bit, yeah. And so when she was able, through like this, you know, alpha wave work that we did, we went back and we put a black doll in her child's hand, her as a child in her hand. And when she was able to do that, she was then able to see herself. And so the next time I saw her on camera, she wasn't all hidden in shadows. She was actually lit up, because seeing herself meant that she allowed other people to see her too. And I think that that's the work. So yeah, Marilyn, I think what you're doing is wonderful, just wonderful.
Thank you.
What comes up for me in that, Janet, is the vulnerability of being seen, and the vulnerability of what happens when you are seen. Because I would imagine, and Marilyn, I'd love to hear more about the bridge building work that you do and how vulnerability lives in that. 'Cause I think we're often aware of that first step of vulnerability, like I deserve to be seen, and acknowledging that. But then as soon as we are seen, it opens up a whole other level of vulnerability that maybe is surprising, because we actually got what we needed. And now what? I'm just curious where that takes you, Marilyn, if you've experienced that or anything you want to add.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I remember in a numerous instances of like, okay, I'm just going to show up. If I show up, you know, and be seen, it'll be enough. And then, yeah, a vulnerability of speaking my truth, you know, showing up as me, and the courage to be myself in spaces, and experiencing a bit of the rub, a bit of the, you know, the discomfort, you know, in some spaces of like, oh, yeah, we wanted you here, but we just want you physically here. we don't want you talking or sharing your ideas. Not that that was ever explicitly said, but that's, you know, the messages are that I got an interaction with people. Yeah, and just, you know, realizing the courage it takes to be able to challenge and disrupt the status quo. I mean, as a speaking for myself as an Enoch Polish Ukrainian woman, entering into any space, but you know, I'm thinking specifically about Indigenous spaces. You know, my role as an educator for the last, I don't know, 6-7 years of my career in education, I was like a learning leader in the area of Indigenous education, and showing up as an Enoch person, as an Enoch woman in those spaces is already disrupting the status quo, because often it's, again, because of sheer population size. I mean, predominantly First Nations people in those spaces, and, you know, and what we're learning about in schools, and learning about just in history in and of itself, since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And yeah, just saying, hey, like, I'm here. I'm Enoch. Inuit are here. You know, we're part of this. We're part of this dialogue too, and realizing that, yeah, sometimes you just need another ally. You need somebody else that you can. I'm going to say a buddy. Sorry, my daughter's in kindergarten, so everything I'm thinking about is just like, okay, we have your buddies today. We have your learning buddy. But yeah, sometimes you just need a buddy. You need a buddy to like navigate that space, those spaces and places together, because it can be very challenging. It can be soul crushing, but it's also, I don't want to say invigorating, but just knowing that, like, kind of stirring the pot a little and just saying like, hey, like, I'm here, see me, hear me, so that you can see and hear, you know, others like me. And I think it takes a lot of courage to say, it's just something as an educator, classroom educator, I did, and even as a learning leader, of just saying, you know what, I don't know, but let's learn together. You know, I don't know all of the answers, but that's part of what life is. Life is a learning journey. So let's figure this out together.
I'd love to touch on just a couple of things. The first is a comment, and then the next, I think, takes us deeper into bridge building, but probably from the opposite end of the bridge. So just bear with me for a sec. When you were speaking, Marilyn, especially about your friend, your colleague that you're able to share and grow and experience with, because I think there's two halves of this conversation. You know, like, you are a new consultant in a new business as a change maker. And so you're living your vulnerability as you're growing and expanding so fast. And you're teaching and holding space. And that's all the point of all these conversations. We're living into and leading. We're practicing what we preach, you know, for lack of a better word. So I got this picture when you were talking about you and your friend, your colleague. For me, holding space for vulnerability is, you know, I see you in your fullest greatness. And I know there are many layers of you, many layers as an onion, we've been taught. And I believe that vulnerability is, as you are brave enough to dig into and release each of those layers, I'm strong enough to stand beside you, and I'll just have my hands out, and I'm just going to keep holding the layers. As you're ready to dump them off, I'm there to hold them for you. And that's been my lived experience. You will not get to the deepest layer of me until a deep sense of trust is built. And it's gotten a little easier, but not a lot easier. You know, so that takes me to your work in bridge building. And I feel like this is a relevant conversation or a piece of it, and then we can maybe swing back. But if we are building bridges at this time in history, we're building bridges on one side, but there's also the other side of the bridge that is needing help and allyship, I'm going to say. And this comes from a comment I had recently, so I feel like it's maybe a comment for this conversation. I was speaking so I self-identified as Indigenous when I was about 45 years old. So I spent the first 45 years of my life earning the respect of, I'm just going to say, white males, and the friendship and the trust. So about a week or two ago, I had a conversation with one of my allies, who is a white male in his 70s. And he said, Shar, I've been thinking a lot about reconciliation. I said, great. And he said, I'm scared that it's going to go too far too fast. And I said, okay, let's have a conversation about that. I could feel like, so I am here as an Indigenous woman to be an ally for him and hold space for his vulnerability, to try and understand where that fear is coming from. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to like it, but I'm going to hold space in conversation and try to understand it. And I want to make sure that if we're bridge building, we're building on both sides of the bridge. So there's my side of the bridge I'm building right now. And it's a very real side. Let me tell you, I don't know where that takes you in your work or in this conversation, but that's where it's at for me right now.
Oh, yeah, that is it. I mean, it's so much of this work is, being able to hold space for other people and to understand where they're coming from, and to understand the layers and the history, that they're just starting to come to know and learn about, and to help them unpack that while you're still trying to do it yourself in this space, in so many spaces. And yeah, it feels like sometimes that we're building the bridge, for people, and because we want to get to the other side, we want that other side. We want those, to finally just be in a space where I can just show up as who I am. I don't have to explain myself. I can just show up because and represent because of me. I don't have to do all of these layers of acknowledging, see me for the multiple identities I have, and that I have to explain myself. And yeah, so as that bridge, I think of this work, and I see now, being on the other side as a parent now, of a kid who's starting school, and seeing get the communication, the bridge that is needed, better bridges, I should say, extending the bridge to have better engagement, and knowledge and awareness of what's happening in school, but also having more meaningful discussions and engagements with families, with community, with caregivers. And I think that as bridge builders, is that we hold all of those, we can hold all of those multiple concepts, ideas, and juggle them around to see where in the puzzle, it fits for that given circumstance. And it involves communication. Again, just open, honest, transparent communication with each other. That, we don't have this figured out, but we can figure it out together. And it takes a community to be able to do this. And I think it's that collective mindset and that collective thinking that, we're stronger together, rather than, the individual of it's me, I have to change this. And realizing that I'm thinking about that, but it's just, it's moving to that collective thought of being able to see that we're we're a part of this world together, that we live in this world together, and we're experiencing this world together. And so how do we work to make it better together? Yeah, that's just kind of where I'm sitting right now. And we all have different skills and strengths. And, as bridge builders, like, who are we bringing in? Who can help us with this part? Who has the skills or experience to be able to get us from here to there? And, we need to call on each other for help, because we all have gifts and talents and strengths to give and to offer, and that we want others to be able to see within ourselves and acknowledge. I'm not sure. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Marilyn and Shar, for taking us there. You've said so much. I just sat in a moment of just reimagining what it would be like to walk in a room and not have to explain myself, and what that would feel like. And not that I feel like I even have to explain myself that much. I'm a pretty privileged white chick that can walk into any room and not have to explain myself. But there are compartments that I do. Like, if I'm walking around with that, I can't imagine, or I can try to imagine. So I would just encourage our listeners just to take a moment and imagine what it would be like to get up every day and arrive in the places you arrive without any thought of ever having to explain yourself. Because that's the world I see that you care about the world, Marilyn, but that's the world that you are reimagining for all of us. So I want to take that into the sector that you do a lot of work in, which is the education world. And our second question was, if vulnerability was a medicine, how might that apply, in the work that you do? It doesn't have to be, we don't have to be that obvious about it. I might even just go into this, like, in the work that you do around, like, a school where, or a system where people can walk in without having to explain themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about the bridge building work that you're doing in that sector, or anything that is on your heart around the work you're doing there right now?
Right now, I think when I think about myself personally, so in my bio, I touched on a little bit about photography, and I've been getting back into it. There was a period of time where I just, like, I felt, I don't know, maybe stuck, and I just, like, that creativity, like, that space for creativity wasn't there, and I'm finally getting back into it. And there's part of my commitment to myself in nourishing and nurturing that part of myself is joining what is it called? It's called the Click community. It's just it's a community of people who have a passion for photography, and who at all aspects of the spectrum, from hobbyists to professional photographers. And majority of the people in that community are women or female identifying folks. And there's decided I'm going to do it again this year. It's called Project 52, and it's a 52-week challenge. So there's a theme every week to basically help you work on, just building your photography skills, and that, tapping into that creativity. And there was a theme, was it last week, the week before, where it was around self-portraits. I am learning to get more comfortable with taking pictures of myself. I'm far more comfortable being behind the camera and taking pictures of other people. And it was the theme, oh no, it wasn't self-portraits. The theme was seasonal. And in the description, it also shared that, you could do a self-portrait, and that, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to I just start taking more photos of myself. And you know, being on Vancouver Island, it's the rainy season. And so it just, that week was not a good week to go out outside and, you know, take pictures. I mean, I could take pictures of rain, but I just didn't want to take pictures of rain. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a self-portrait. And I had this idea in the back of my mind. And speaking of that vulnerability piece, I'm like, so this community is also predominantly white, you know, white women. And there I do see more people of the global majority. So they're Black, brown, Asian, South Asian, you know, women in these spaces. And I thought, oh, I really wanted to do this self-portrait of myself wearing, you know, I think Vermeer's painting, the girl with the pearl earring. I thought, I want to do my own spin on this. And so I was like, okay, I think I'm courageous enough to, like, I could take the picture, but courageous enough to actually put it out there, you know, put it in a public space and do so. And so I got my kokum scarf, or my babushka, you know, and I wrapped it up. I got my friend Veronica to help me, you know, figure out how do I tie this on. And I got, instead of a pearl earring, I have these beautiful little caribou antler earrings that I got from Haidani Design. They're Inuit designers from Alviat in Nunavut. And so I got my caribou antler earring in, and I got, you know, got a purple sweater on, and, you know, did the pose, and it decided that, you know, the background shouldn't just be just muted, you know, black or whatever. It's like, I'm going to have a bit of a nature scene, a forest scene behind me with the light on there. And so I was happy with it. And when it came to the time of like, okay, it took me a good 30 minutes of like, okay, I can post this. I'm going to post it. Okay, no, not yet. Okay, I'm going to write a little bit about the description. And I, you know, again, it's the education piece, the bridge building of explaining what a kokum scarf was, explaining, you know, caribou antler earrings. And I had titled my self-portrait Agnak, which is woman in Inuktitut, Agnak with a caribou antler earring. So again, just, yeah, always, you know, providing a bit of that education and understanding of like Agnak, like, so I'm Inuk, and Agnak means woman in Inuktitut in the dialect that my mother speaks, and explained a little bit the caribou antler earring, and that, you know, showing up as me in this space. You know, and challenging, you know, I think about that with, when I think about the work I've done with educators of like, here are ways you can, you know, you can challenge this. Like, how do other people look at this? Like, you know, we look at art, it's predominantly white, you know, Western European art, mostly men, white men. Like, how can we start challenging and, you know, interrogating those narratives that are out there, and what can we start doing? How can you work with, you know, with students, with community members? Let them be the ones to tell the story, to craft the narrative. You don't have to be the one to do it. You just have to be the facilitator and the guide in doing so, which is what the work is. And when I think about, Charlene, back to you know, the conversation you had with your friend there, that we're walking on this journey together, right? And as bridge builders, I just have this vision, you know, this image in my mind of like, we're walking side by side next to each other, and just a reminder of in so many spaces I've been in with First Nations elders and knowledge keepers, you know, in Ontario and in BC here, that just a reminder of like, nobody's above when we gather in circle, and, you know, we're alongside, nobody's above, nobody's below, nobody's behind, nobody's in front. We are all equals here. And yeah, just that reminder that we're here to learn with each other and figure this out. You don't have to be an expert, and that expectation of like being an expert, we just need to let go of it. It's that layer of the onion we need to shed. Just let go of that layer.
Janet, I want to pass to you.
Yeah, so what I've been hearing this whole conversation is the underlying need to be seen and be heard. And that is a place of vulnerability. But it's also, as change makers, as bridge builders, we get to hold that space to allow people to be seen and be heard. Like Shah, your friend that said, you know, it's all happening too fast. All he wanted was to be seen and heard in his own vulnerability, in his own fear of, this was my identity and now I don't know who I am anymore. If that part of me is taken away, which it's not ever going to be taken away, but that's the feeling that I think was coming from him, you know. And so, I mean, we're going to go into this right at the end, but this just being present disrupts the status quo. That is my takeaway of this whole conversation. When you said that, Marilyn, just being present disrupts the status quo, because that's other people just seeing you and going, oh, and reflecting back to them, okay, well, how do I feel about this person now entering my space? And it's that, and it's just, yeah, loving this conversation.
Yeah, we've got like 2 minutes before we squeeze. I'm going to squeeze in another 2 minutes before we do our wrap up circle. Marilyn, I'm going to pass back to you. Is there just, you know, our third question is around, you know, what's your long game? What's the long game that you're holding space for? Anything you want to add?
No. Well, yes. I think maybe just a continuation of Janet, what you were saying is that just, what am I holding space for? I'm holding space for the time when, you know, myself and others no longer have to come and show up with a minority mindset of like, I'm the only, or there's only so few of us. That it's just, we're here, we're seen. And yeah, I look forward to that day of no longer having to, you know, we have to further remind people of all the multiple identities that we have, you know, and that we hold in the spaces that we're in, that are the intersectionality of our identities and our experiences are acknowledged and understood, and that we see each other as human beings. Then we come into this space, then we have something to offer. And yeah, that I no longer have to, I mean, I love sharing. Don't get me wrong. I love sharing that I'm Enoch and Polish Ukrainian, but that to no longer have to start every single time when I enter a space to say, by the way, I'm Enoch Polish Ukrainian woman. You know, this is where my mother was from. This is where my father was from. Though it's important because it's part of my roots and who I am. But yeah, we can just be who we are.
Wow. Thank you, Marilyn. There's a lot in this space. If you're watching, I just invite you to breathe and take as my good friend Nicole Natras always says, take 7 seconds to allow what's been said in the room to just have its way with you for a moment. Let's move into our closing round of what we're taking away from this conversation. And Marilyn, we'll go to you last. You have the last word. I'll begin. I don't know that I actually have words or clear words for it right now. It feels really misty, like very ethereal, not ethereal, but just like like it's words between words that I'm noticing. And so my takeaway is slow down even more. And I'm giving myself instructions right now, like allow more of that awareness of what might be in the room that is in the room, but may not have a voice or words or there might not be enough. I don't like that word enough, but anyway, bravery to share that yet. But it doesn't mean it's not in the room. So that's what I'm leaving with is slow down even more to see people. Yeah, thank you. And I'll let whoever wants to go next, whoever feels they're ready to go.
I kind of covered mine before. So the being present disrupts the status quo, and the importance of giving that vulnerable space to see people, for people to be seen, and feeling brave enough to enter into that vulnerability of being seen. That's what I'm taking away. So Sha.
Yeah, I'm just taking away the visual of bridge building and how we will get to be whole humans, where we can ditch the minority mindset faster if we're building the bridge from both ends. And I think if I'm listening through the words today, that is the invitation of just beyond this conversation is this craving. It's back to a fire circle we had a couple years ago, one family. It's these are all very important conversations to have, and ultimately we are one human family that is whose job it is to heal and return to spirit.
I just have this image of, two hands just, I'm not sure what they're doing, if they're holding space or what they're holding, but it's just that nurturing. Is that the right word? Nurturing, caring, just being able to hold space. That, there is, I guess, foundation, like there, the bottom isn't going to fall out from under you, though it feels like it sometimes, right? But that, there's a foundation there, and sometimes we just need to slow down and be silent, in whatever way that looks like. And feel it, to know that it's, it's there. Somebody's got you.
Somebody's got you. I love that. Thanks, Marilyn. I want to let all of our listeners know that when Marilyn launches her podcast, or as it comes forward, we're going to be right there sharing it with all of you in our community. And yeah, just watch. There'll be more information about Marilyn coming, and you can check out her Amplify profile on our website, on the Powerhouse website. And I want to thank you, all of our listeners, for joining us on Gather for Her, a Powerhouse Masterclass series unpacking what it means to be a relational leader in these unprecedented times of global change. I want you to know that this conversation has been recorded, so you'll see it on our YouTube channel. It'll also lives again as a podcast renamed as The How for Her, which you can find on Spotify and all the other places that you listen. Gather for Her is created by Powerhouse, where we champion relational leaders using our relational changemaker model, which looks like a community of practice called the Leader Path, a storytelling platform where we met Marilyn called Amplify, and our constellation network that is the House. Everything we do is guided by Indigenous and ancestral wisdom, which is more often than not matriarchal and matrilineal in approach, which is where the her comes from in our name. We want to thank our impact media producer and sister company, Regen Media, Charlene Sanjenko, who reminds us that we can take the power of media into our own hands when we support stories that heal, regenerate, uplift, and transform. We also want to thank the hands at our back here at Powerhouse. That's Powerhouse and Regen's digital storytellers, Zoe Gray, Madeline Archibald, and Willow Smith. And to my co-hosts and sisters in change, the braid of Powerhouse, Shar, Christina, and Sharon. Christina and Sharon aren't here today. But unto you today, Janet Mohappy Banks, for being here and all you bring to the house. And to all of you, our listeners, our community of change makers, leaders, and social impactors, thank you for walking with us in co-creation of the world that we're living into together. You're always welcome here each week on Gather for Her, and there's a place for you at our Fire on the Leader Path, where we are unpacking this conversation in our wisdom circle. And just know that on Marilyn's words, at Powerhouse, you're making us even more aware, Marilyn, of the importance for brave spaces to see people and where people can practice showing up as they are, where they are in that moment. So thank you for all that you do. And we'll see everybody again on our next Gather episode. Thanks for being here.